So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're connected to. Welcome to this year's World Mental Health Day 2020, whose focus is on increased investment on mental health. It also coincides as being part of the Urban October and the 40-day Safer Cities Challenge. I am Juma, Assiago, the lead of the Safer Cities program at UN Habitat, and I'm proud to welcome today Jesus R, who is a filmmaker and director of the upcoming film Suicide Saint, which addresses mental health in our communities. And for the vast number of people caught in poverty or in fragmented humanitarian settings around the world, there is no better time than to associate with iconic figures like Jesus R, who for 2 decades has been engaged with the UN's global network on safer cities, whose innovative tool Guns for Cameras has been looked at by many cities as one of the innovative ways of engaging young people and building on their coping and adaptation abilities. Jesus, who's an honorary award recipient from 2 past presidents of the United States, and who as well has had a very humbling past by being shot 22 times, a very welcome showcase by the UN for the UN coming forth.
Thank you, Juma. It's such an honor to be acknowledged by the UN Habitat and the Safer Cities program and to contribute to such a historical event. Through the years, we've been colleagues and friends, and I couldn't be more inspired by your work and vision to change the world. So thank you for acknowledging Suicide Saint, and thank you for honoring me as a filmmaker.
Much appreciated, Jesus R.
So today, for the rest of the day, or for the rest of this program, we're going to be interviewing the cast of Suicide Saint and other special guests to talk about the film, to talk about mental health, to talk with some of our social impact partners and how we can find new ways to address mental health, whether it be mayors in local cities and police forces. We have a conversation scheduled with the chief of police and other innovative ways that we can make these changes in our community per the initiative of the 40-day Safer Cities. How can we utilize the arts and have more convergence between government agencies and artists to make a difference in our communities? I'm extremely honored to have our next guest join us today, because not only is she an advocate for rights and freedom, but she's also one of the most influential women in the world today. Welcome, Tamika Mallory. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm sorry that I have to speak with you on such an important day from a car, but I'm glad to be able to participate in any way possible.
Well, we appreciate it. I know you're extremely busy and you're on the move between cities, fighting for many people and many causes, and you're definitely inspiring the world right now. First, because we are addressing mental health, I think a lot of times people take for granted those in leadership or those who are at the front of the fight and don't account for their own struggles, the things that they have to go through and persevere and all the obstacles. How are you feeling personally, and what's your state of mind at the moment, and all the everything that you're bearing, all the burdens that you're bearing for the rest of society?
Well, a lot of people look down upon the idea of being an angry Black woman. That's not something that we want to claim, because it has been stigmatized, and many people feel that once you are classified as an angry Black woman, it closes doors for you and it puts you in a category of being someone that folks can't work with and being unreasonable. But I actually claim it. I claim the feeling that I have of being an angry Black woman, because I do feel angry. I often feel angry. I often feel extremely frustrated by this perpetual state of trauma that we are up against in our communities. And from a personal perspective, that looks like a lot of things. It looks like losing a lot of weight at one time. As I'm writing my book right now, I was recalling a moment when I was under an extreme amount of pressure in this movement with all the issues, the death, the killings, the pressure that we received politically, the pressure that we received from opposition. And I was going through so much that I remember, and this wasn't very long ago, just maybe 2 years, where my weight dropped down below 100 pounds. I was so small and so frail and so vulnerable just because of all the stress. There's physical implications for living through perpetual trauma or being away from your family, being in situations where you're constantly on go, on the run, not being able to take a conference call in your, in an office or at home, but having to do things in between cities, as you said. There are definitely implications. It impacts your mental health and also helps to increase the burnout factor in many activists and leaders who we see who are really strong and they're out there, and then all of a sudden you begin to see things happening where the person is literally deteriorating before your eyes. I'm grateful that I have a very solid family in terms of my movement family and of course my own family that actually support me and hold me up. And with that, I'm in a better situation than many people where I actually have people to carry me. And when they see me get tired or they see that I'm not operating at my best, they step in. And I just suggest to everybody as we deal with, and as we reflect on our mental health, the time to really make sure your tribe around you are people who deposit rather than spread.
And I can really appreciate everything that you're sharing with our audience, because there's a lot of times there's disconnect between people who are influencers or celebrity or of course your celebrity comes from the work that you're doing on the ground, from organizing the Women's March to everything you're doing today to advocate for Breonna Taylor. You've become a global figure of inspiration, and I think a lot of times people don't understand the amount of pressure that comes with that, and the fact that you're dealing with so much pain and struggle and death and seeing it at the front line. I can imagine that has a tremendous impact on you. So thank you for sharing, some of your outlets that you have and the support of the family. It's important for people watching, if they have any anxiety or depression and whatever they're doing in their lives, to try to build a community of people around you that you can get help to and have access to. What are some of the things that you feel help you cope or create balance or keep you grounded within all the madness that's going on?
Well, I'll give you one thing in particular. I feel like the moments when I actually turn off the news, turn off the posting, and having to be so deeply invested in my work, when I just spend time with friends and family and we just laugh and enjoy one another's company, that has probably been the most therapeutic for me in this movement. Being able to turn it off temporarily. I don't think that we should take the attitude that because it's so stressful, we can't be engaged at all, because there has to be a balance. And that's exactly what I've had to learn over years. We definitely need to be engaged in work that helps to make for a better society. But we should not be to the point where because there's going to be so many letdowns, as we know. I'm wearing my Breonna Taylor mask, and in the last 2 weeks, we've been experiencing extreme despair in terms of the letdown that we received when we heard that the Attorney General in Kentucky failed to present charges to a grand jury and give them the opportunity to make a decision about what happened to Breonna, or make a decision for us to be able to find out by the way of the trial. And so that those moments of despair, they come often. And in order to be able to balance it, you have to turn the movement off sometimes step away and take a moment just to be with friends and family to enjoy and uplift yourself.
And if we could talk about, since we are addressing mental health today and World Mental Health Day, and mental health has a lot of implications in society on how we think about ourselves, how we think about each other, how we perceive the world, a lot of which were influenced by culture, which is why I'm doing the film Suicide Saint, to address mental health and to try to change the stigma around that. Through your work, how do you see the importance of mental health showing up, whether it's in how it impacts the community, when people see other people dying in front of them on camera and how they're traumatized by that, to circumstances within communities that people have to live through on a daily basis, or to the lack of proper training in police forces and a lack of proper mental health care there for officers that are working long hours in stressful situations and not making the right choice, whether it's motivated by race or just motivated by poor training, or motivated by this culture that that allows this horrific situations to continue.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's right. What you said, there's so many different elements, and if you think about all that you just mentioned, they all take different. They all will require, different levels of attention and different types of training, funding, resources, and also behavioral shifts. Also, the narrative that we hear about people, whether they be people of color, whether they be the police, whether they be mentally ill. Some of the narratives that are out there are narratives that really cause more oppression and more pain upon the community, and really just stretch the relationships between all of us. I think that the moment that we're in requires us to have a real serious truth and reconciliation conversation. And so when you think about mental health in the Black community, just as I mentioned to you, what I go through, and I am a pretty trained leader and someone who has been doing this work for 25 years, and yet still I am traumatized often by some of the things that I hear and the cases that I'm involved in, and the literal murder that I have to witness, whether it be on the back end or even the videotape that we're watching every single day. This is the first generation that we have of young people who can literally watch murder in the palm of their hand, on their cell phones. They can literally see a person who looks like them be killed over and over and over again. It has to be doing something to the mental psyche of our youth, of even our elders who are unable to help stop this, even though they've been fighting for many, many, many years, and to our community. It's very difficult, I would imagine, for a Black man to feel safe in society, knowing that he has to reduce himself in order, whether he's right or wrong in a situation, in order to actually save his life, to get home to his family. And that is the same for all of our communities, for Black women, for Black trans folks. We're dealing with constant trauma. When you couple that with communities that are impacted by every single social inequality issue that has ever existed and ever been known to man, we know that our communities have a trauma level that it will require a very specific, strategic, and a precise level of intervention. And a lot of it has to do with providing the services needed so that in these communities, we will have the type of support that's needed to address the drug addiction, to address the lack of education, the poverty that we see, homelessness, lack of food when you're in food deserts where there may be one or no grocery store. All of these issues make up the level of trauma, if you will, that is literally burning up the insides of too many people. I think that the priorities in this nation have to shift, right? When you think about policing, since you asked that question, it is true that police officers, many of them are also stressed and taxed. A lot of times it has to do with the job itself, but it also has to do with the politics around the job and the fact that since there are limited accountability measures happening within these different institutions, they live under constant pressure because the community is unhappy. Officers are feeling unsafe and feeling less and less confident on the job when they have to be party to things that they know are not right. Yet the system says because of the blue wall, there is nothing that you can do, no one to tell, no recourse to take. These are the types of things that create a very stressful situation. And so when an officer gets a call and is asked to show up at a Wendy's to deal with someone who has been drinking, who fell asleep in a drive-through, you're going to see a situation, and I'm not even adding and the element that we'll leave it unsaid for today, which is the racial component, where we know that there are biases that live within the hearts and minds of many people, not just police officers, but many people, and then police officers would also be a part of that pool. But we will put that to the side. Just knowing that an officer is being called to the scene of an incident where there is someone who has been who is intoxicated, who is not of danger to anyone. We watched the tape of Rayshard Brooks and how he was speaking and really trying to work out the issue that he was up against, right? We saw all of that. So we didn't see somebody who was being who was antagonizing or being dangerous outside of that vehicle. And yet the officer's only way of dealing with the incident was to escalate versus de-escalate, because they actually do not have the necessary training. And I want to be clear about that, because they are trained and the training works in other communities. But the training that is needed in our community specifically includes an accountability measure that says if you step out of line, that you will in fact be challenged. And so you have an officer here who really did not have the skill set nor the concern to stop the incident that was happening. Instead, a man was actually killed. I believe that the way that we have to deal with these incidents and to deal with the issue of police community relations and mental health and the crisis that we are facing is to look at how we take some of the resources that we have police officers and police departments that have millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. In some cases, when we look at the budgets, there's trillions of dollars being invested in our police departments, and yet mental health in our communities is lacking, and some people are unable to find a specialist to help them deal with the myriad of different mental health issues that we are dealing with. And so I believe that there has to be a balance with everything in society, and that there has to be at this moment a reimagining, if you will, and also a reprioritizing of people versus enforcement. And that's what the Defund Police campaign is about, which has some people scared because they think we're saying, let's get rid of police. I hope one day we get to the point where we don't need to have police officers with guns in our community, but that is not what this campaign is about right now. It is about balance. It is about reprioritizing and putting the people and the people's needs first, and then dealing with enforcement as an overlay of that.
And I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you for having such a brilliant and comprehensive vision on how to address these problems. This is really indicative of what the UN is doing with the 40 Days Safer Cities program, is to change the indicating factors of how we define safer cities. And it's not just about policing and prisons. It's about arts and programs and development and addressing issues like mental health. Last question. What's in the future for Until Freedom?
So the future of Until Freedom is bright. As an organization, we believe that it is not just about action in the community and protest, but it's also about investing in the community and having community service. And so we are working across this country on helping to build new and young and budding activists and helping them to really stand in their own power and to get the resources that they need to do great work. Since we've been in Kentucky fighting for Breonna Taylor, we have started to help build capacity for leaders and organizations there. And so we're really, really invested in a deep way in this idea of community service, although most of the press that we receive comes more from the protest side. And that's also where we get to bring awareness to the incredible issues. And when I say incredible, I mean incredible in the worst way, issues that our communities are facing. But, you know, unfortunately, as long as we're still being killed, some people say they don't want to hear from Tamika, Mallory. They don't want to see Until Freedom out there. They want to know, why do we even have to exist? As long as we're being killed, Until Freedom is working. And so if people want to see groups like me and you know, like mine, and voices like mine go away, then stop killing us, because that diminishes our need to be on the ground day in and day out.
Thank you, Tamika. I truly appreciate your time and your inspiration and fighting for all of us. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. Take care and good luck.
Thank you. This is the Suicide Saint 40 Days Safer City special, addressing mental health, October 10th, World Mental Health Day, and I'm excited to introduce the stars of our film, Suicide Saint. Ronald Aviator Watson playing Vincent Cross and Andrew Jacobs as Thomas Metal. How's it going, guys?
Good. Thank you for having me.
How you doing, everyone?
Thanks for joining us today. So before we get into the film and talk about your characters and what the film was about, let's just catch up with both of you guys. Aviator, if you want to tell us some things you got going on right now and what's happening with your career.
Oh, well, as far as my career, outside of me being an actor, of course, I also do music. I'm working on an album as well. And I also have a clothing brand, which is called Aviator Fly Boys. Me and my wife just opened up a clothing boutique downtown Newark, 11 Clinton Street, Newark, New Jersey. So be on the lookout for that.
And what's the name of the music album, if you want to tell everyone?
Growth and Development.
Okay. We're definitely going to look forward to getting some music from Growth and Development on a soundtrack for Suicide Saint. And Andrew, if you wouldn't mind telling us what are you working on currently, or what else do you have going on before we get into Suicide Saint?
Well, I actually just had a show that my character gets introduced in the second season. It's for Netflix, called Trinkets, and my character is Ben Truax. So that's out right now. I hope you guys check it out. Hope you guys enjoy it. I was really happy to be a part of that. And right now, you know, unfortunately with the whole pandemic, just auditioning and, you know, moving forward and excited for this Suicide Saint.
Yeah, I see everyone's talking about this Trinket show, and a lot of people are posting you on social media. You're definitely a heartthrob. You have a lot of fans. I hope you can make this adjustment to playing a deeper, darker character and a little bit of a douchebag in Suicide Saint at first. But you know, we'll see how that character kind of grows and develops. So I want to get into the characters you guys are playing in the film. Aviator, you play a character named Vincent Cross, who deals with a lot of adversity, while Andrew's character, Metal, comes from privilege, or we perceive of him having a perfect life from privilege. Your character deals with a lot of adversity, losing his father at a young age, battling hypervigilance and schizophrenia. It's something that we can all relate to in terms of having this good and bad conscience, or these voices that speak to us in terms of decisions we have to make on a daily basis. Obviously, with an illness, is much more prevalent in people hearing voices or having actual hallucinations. We recently did a screen test with you that I'm going to share today. It's kind of a world premiere, definitely a world premiere. We're on a global stage with this promotion of the 40 Days Safer City with the UN. But, you know, just to have a little more conversation, we'll give our viewers an inside look at one of the effects that we're creating for the hallucination.
Your father didn't save you. He forsake you. And now, you're gonna damn your own son!
So in the film, your character has, this good conscience that's provoking him to do good, and then obviously an alternate, an opposite bad conscience that's kind of promoting him to do evil. Every day we have these challenges in life, in our environment, no matter where you come from or what you go through. How do you cope with your personal challenges, or how does mental health affecting our community?
Well, I can really relate to a lot of my character's traumas because of the similarities of my father being killed by police when I was 8 years of age. I went through some dark times and had nightmares, severe mood swings. I guess seeing your parent in the casket so young and having so much attention on you and you not understanding to void inside can be traumatizing. I was his child, but my father took care of my other siblings as well. So far as, as far as that goes, he was the rock both sides. He was the only boy from his parents, and was very extremely family oriented. So he was the only boy. He was the protector. I kind of take on that role today. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of people say that knew him and know me now, like family, be like, oh, you just like your father. You know what I'm saying? Which I really don't know because I really don't know him. Of course, I was only 8. You know what I mean? So, and not only that, it had to have an effect on my mother as well. Of course, you know what I mean? Being a single mom, raising me, of course, another 2 siblings. So I could definitely relate.
And not having a father at a young age, another theme of the film, respectively, both characters, even though they come from different worlds, have this relationship with their father, or absence of a relationship with their father, whether the father is there or not. I don't want to, give away any of the story for the other character, but how do you think that impacts your community in general? Some of your peers, or the decisions they make, or the influence they have, or whether they're able to receive that discipline, right? Because there's balance when you have a mother and a father, and of course you're very successful yourself. So whatever the statistics say about people without absent fathers having a higher rate of crime, or a higher rate of going to prison, or lower graduation rates, you've obviously defied those statistics and are successful. You're a self-made entrepreneur. You're an actor. You're a fashion owner. You own a clothing store. How do we overcome those challenges in our community, and how do you feel that impacts society?
Oh man, help is needed. I mean, it's hard to do it as a single parent, of course. Help is definitely needed. We need recreation centers open and things of that nature. The children really don't have too much to look forward to. You know what I'm saying? So help is very needed in our urban community, period. Guidance comes from all aspects of life, from all different individuals of life. You feel me? So it's yeah, you can say that. I'm a lucky one.
Yeah, I mean, I am too. When I was younger, I had my own challenges. Being shot at 22 times, and I had a lot of obstacles to overcome to be where I'm at now, which is why I'm so passionate and focused on addressing these issues through media, through change the narrative of how we see ourselves and see each other, and create more positive images that we can aspire to.
In my youth, you know what I'm saying, not only did I lose my father, but I was shot twice. You know what I'm saying? 2 different scenarios, 2 different times. I was shot when I was 17 years of age, and then later on I was also shot when I was 25. So not only has I been through the trauma of dealing with my father's passing, but me laying there as well, on 2 different occasions, you know what I mean? So having 2 bullets in my back, you know what I mean, at this present time, and, not really having any health issues, I guess God definitely has a plan for me, you know what I mean? So, and it drives me. I'm well driven. You know what I mean? I'm motivated. I'm dedicated to my craft. You will see when the Suicide Saint movie actually dropped. You will definitely see how passionate I am about this craft. Period. You know
Well, and I mean that's I think indicative of all of our relationships, right? There's definitely a plan for you. I feel like there's a plan for me. There's a reason that God brought us together. I have this, special relationship with Andrew as well, in terms of us bonding on things that we have in common, and just how, instantly we connected on other projects. And I'm really inspired by the whole process of this project, because I'll be honest with you, Cross, I get a lot of pushback from studios, distributors, or whoever in talking about promoting this film. The industry, as we all know, is set up of this idea where they focus on algorithms and green lighting or pushing projects for us based on whatever A-list actor or what other credentials or hype you have built around the project. And we've already turned down as a production, upwards of $4 million for another offer to have an A-list actor in this role that you're going to play. So I've had challenges behind the scene that I'll be, very transparent today in casting you as the lead, but I don't feel like there's anybody else in the world that can play this part. Not only because it's authentic to your character and real world experiences, and you're going to be able to bring this, organic and very real pain and life to it, because these are things, some of those things I learned about you after you were already cast. Initially, I was just impressed with your talent. And there's a certain amount of raw talent there that I was just blown away by, having worked with you on other short films. You played a supporting role in Asian Mob, and we did some other videos together. I was really inspired to write this role for you because I saw a talent in you that was just tremendous. So it just became very serendipitous and coincidental when I started to tell you about the character losing his father at a young age, that you told me the painful experience that happened to you in real life. Something was very similar to Andrew. Andrew, when I talked to you about your character in the film, you shared with me something personal that I didn't know. I wasn't aware of your circumstances growing up and how that impacted your life. If you wouldn't mind sharing with us a little bit about what I'm alluding to here, what were the circumstances of you coming into this world and being a young child?
So when I was born, I grew up in and out of foster homes, and I was taken at a very young age. The first time I was taken from my family, I was 3 months old, and I was every other year in and out of foster homes, switching families, and it was hard for me to kind of figure myself out and I guess know what my purpose was. And I was later adopted by who's my mom now, and she tried her best to give me the life that she thinks I deserve. And like I said, I just had a hard time connecting with myself, and I made some bad choices and try to find myself in other forms of family, like like gang stuff, and just went through a lot of stuff. Gave her a lot of trouble, and became a father at the age of 18. And then I think that's what I finally found my purpose. And I was like, I don't want my child to have to go anything close to what I went through. So I set my game up and try to, or still on that path of changing my life and making a life for myself and for him. So
and that's something that we all have in common, right? Being the victim of a circumstance, but not not continuing that cycle, right? Like we've all been, the thing that we were affected by, we have a focus on to change and break that cycle. And that's a theme of the film itself in Suicide Saint. There's this kind of duality and because the words don't go together, right? They're in direct conflict, Suicide Saint. But we all have these challenges. Every saint has a past, every sinner has a future. And, in the film, one of the big themes is this idea of sacrifice to save others. When you think about your place and yourself in this world, how do you cope with any type of anxiety or self-doubts that you have and being who you need to be, especially as a father and you have a young boy looking up to you?
It's still something that, I'm learning to deal with and get better at, I think, as we all are. And I don't think there's a problem with that whatsoever. I think what I most recently, what I'm learning how to do is just kind of self-reflect and know that everything takes time. So a lot of times when I'm stressed or dealing with my anxiety and everything's not working the way it needs to be, and I'm just trying to figure it out, I kind of learned how to take a step back and realize that it's not going to help me as much if I'm, I guess, panicking. So I try to just relax and see where I want to be or where I visualize myself at, and I just try to tell myself that it's going to be okay with taking my time or dealing with my issues, just so I can give myself a little bit of a breather. And like I said, at times it's harder than others, and sometimes I feel like I'm not gonna, I guess, make it to where I want to be or what other people perceive me as. But I can't worry about all that. At the end of the day, I just have to take it step by step and just know that I have a place to where I want to be, and I see myself, and as you said, being a role model to my son. So step by step is how I do it.
Yeah, that, having some somewhere to look forward to, right? Some direction, some hope. For some people, it's faith. I think the biggest thing that challenges people in the world that creates an anxiety is not having a sense of what their future is, or not having any hope for a future, right? You might be in an environment or have circumstances where you feel like, what does it all mean? Like there's nothing to look forward to. And in some people who have it all, they still find a way to, not that they're ungrateful or unappreciative. Maybe there's a chemical imbalance, or maybe there's the trauma that happened to them at a younger age, where they still find a way not to be able to appreciate it. So it's not always, as the three of us can relate to, it's not always what happens to you in life, but it's how you react to it and how you perceive yourself and perceive the world. You fall down 8, you get up 9. Like it's this idea of never quitting, never going backwards, and always trying to move forward. And if you're having problems or trouble moving forward, then reach out. You reach out to a friend, a family member, a professional. We want to change the stigma of mental health and have people feel more comfortable in talking to each other about what they're going through and their issues. So it's really important that you guys are sharing your personal stories today as actors, as influencers, as people that society looks up to, because you're in a position of influence. They see you on TV, they see you in music videos, they hear your music, all these content that you're creating, you're influencing somebody. Okay. So it's,
I found this on the web. For Hey See You on TV, they see you music.
I don't know why my Siri just got this. I'm done with this iPad today. Sorry, let me try to pick up.
There you go.
But you guys are big influencers, so it means a lot to me. Not only that we're having this great creative collaborative energy and on us working on a film together, which is a process, right? And there's a lot of trust and synergy you have to have there to have great execution and outcome. But it means even more that you guys are willing behind the scenes and outside of the film to talk about mental health and share something so personal to you and be vulnerable for the betterment of other people, right? To inspire and help other people, because this is something you don't have to do. You could just be focused on your careers, your profit, your success, and all these other things that so much of society is, too much focused on, right? We're not focused on the humanity and the compassion. So I definitely appreciate you guys. Aviator, in the film you play Vincent Cross, and Cross deals with hypervigilance and schizophrenia. And through his schizophrenia in the film, we explore the impact of the voices on his life, on his routine, and what happens to him, right? So he has this good conscious and this bad conscious that we define through smoke and light. What are your challenges on a daily basis of reacting to situations? Every situation, every second of the day, we could either react to something in a positive way or in a negative way. And sometimes when people are doing negative things around us, it might be something as small as somebody cutting you off in traffic or, bumping you in the street or whatever it is, that impacts the rest of our day, right? The things that happen to us, we incorporate into our next decision or response. So how do you approach your day? Because obviously in your life, you've had a lot of challenges that you've overcome. So you must have been doing something not to engage or react to that to get to a point that you're successful now.
Prayer, man, prayer. Asking my Lord for patience. Prayer, man. It's the world is chaotic. I don't need to be.
Thank you guys for joining us today. October 10th, World Mental Health Day. I appreciate the conversation, the insight. We're really excited to make this movie, and we hope that we're going to impact the world. With this little indie art film, that we want to save humanity and try to unite a world divided.
We will. Stay tuned, world.
That's right.
Hi, my name's Catherine Pitty. I'm a freshman at Westfield State, and this is my very first Fresh Check Day. Each booth has a different message that they're portraying and educating to students, so I'm really interested to learn new things as well.
Encourage people to be the 9 out of 10 that support the 1 out of 10 that seriously consider suicide during college.
Grab a cupcake. Thank you. You have to be honest with who you are and what you're experiencing yourself, and you have to be open to learning different things.
Welcome to Mood Matters Table, trying to combat anxiety and depression.
Thank you.
The best way to do that is to talk about your feelings.
Love! No matter how fun a booth was or how unrelated the activity was, they all had a different message, a really important takeaway. One of the women from one of the tables was completely open about her story with me, and you don't typically see that when you're talking to strangers, so it's really refreshing when that happens.
Write down one of your insecurities on a piece of paper and throw it in the trash.
As a woman, it's so easy to look on social media and to look and to hear comments about what my body is supposed to be like.
You can dip your hands in some chalk and some water, and you can smear one of the body shaming statements.
It was really nice to be able to cross out and tear up the things that I didn't like about myself. In my own mind, it's something that's negative about me or something that other people dislike, but it's important to remember that that's just my own perception and that's not how people really perceive it.
Thank you all for joining us on World Mental Health Day.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Marisa, we just played a video for the Jordan Porco Foundation, and it's amazing all the work you guys are doing nationwide to inspire high school and college students to kind of improve their outlook on life and help deal with some of their inner turmoil. If you could share with us, why did you start the Jordan Porco Foundation? Why are you so passionate about mental health and suicide prevention?
Thank you. We started the foundation 9 years ago after my son died by suicide. He was a college freshman. And, when we think about people dying by suicide, Jordan was the last kid that you think that would die by suicide. And so, despite the resources that were out there, we just felt they weren't really reaching the students on college campus. So we developed our program to really make mental health and suicide prevention messaging approachable and peer-centered by the student groups on college campus. And that's how we developed our Fresh Check Day program. And it's really taken off because the messaging is authentic and it's adaptable for whatever campus you are across the country. And it's students reaching out to students and really kind of supporting the notion that taking care of your mental health is something that we shouldn't take for granted. Everybody has different struggles, that students aren't alone in their struggles, and really kind of building that type of community on a college campus and realizing what the resources are on campus, and that there is help available if someone's struggling, and that there are alternative ways to really support your mental health that will maybe keep you from getting to the point of a crisis.
Thank you, Marisa. And Rachel, you also work for the JPF Foundation, Jordan Porco Foundation. What, if you could share with us what your role in the organization is, and what are some of the initiatives? I really love the Fresh Check Day. Maybe you can tell us how that came about and some of the other programs that you guys are currently doing across the country.
Sure, thank you. So I'm Rachel Pappy. I'm the Director of Events and Communications at the Jordan Porco Foundation. And Fresh Check Day was developed by Marisa and Ernie Porco after losing Jordan to suicide. And they thought about a program that Jordan would have attended. What was lacking in the mental health field? And it was that engaging program that came to be named Fresh Check Day. And as Marisa mentioned earlier, it is such an engaging atmosphere for students to really connect with each other in a way that they feel safe and likely to open up about their mental health. And usually it can be intimidating to just approach a brick and mortar building. And this is a way that they're out in a fair-like setting, and the mental health resources available on campus and in the community are right there, and they can go in an approachable way to seek that help.
And Rachel, you guys have something going on today for one of your programs, Linked for Life. Do you want to share with us a little bit about that program?
We do. We're so excited. We co-founded this with Bears Restaurant Group, and we're linking together to save lives. 11,000 carabiners to break the stigma, the silence, and the world record for the longest chain of carabiners. And the numbers, we came about those numbers to come together in solidarity and support and to combat the stigma, and also the statistic that 1,100 college students die by suicide annually. So we wanted to pick a number that was really meaningful in our space in an effort, concerted collective effort to prevent suicide and raise mental health awareness on the very important day it is today, World Mental Health Day.
I wish I could show people what it's like to live in this brain. It's not like this all the time. But like you see the bullhorns over there, everything is dangerous. Everyone is out to get you. Everything can hurt you. Cars, buildings, fucking flowers. It's just part of the deal, man.
I was saying to myself, why is this happening to me? Why couldn't I be normal? The last thought before I went over was, jump now! You know, I have auditory hallucinations, and they were just screaming. They were screaming in my head, you must die! You must die now! Jump now! And I did. I was compelled to die. In 4 seconds, I fell 75 miles an hour, 25 stories, and I hit the water.
Nobody thinks about the ones that have to go pick it up. 57 dead bodies had to pick up. People, you were the only one alive.
I heard you coming through the door. You were on the gurney, and you were vocal, and you were basically saying, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
22 American military veterans and active duty servicemen and women are dying by suicide every day. Never forget that they were our heroes too.
I was very nearly a statistic, and the facts are that Aboriginal men are 6 times more likely to die by suicide.
For every one death by suicide, at the very least 115 people are directly affected.
When I found out Dwayne took his life, my first initial reactions were it was my fault. It shattered people's lives. It wasn't just a thing where it changed them for a week or a month or 6 months. It was a lifetime.
We lost our son, Matthew. He's 20 years old.
I wondered if I did something wrong.
In 2008, my brother passed away by suicide. He was only 19 years of age. If he had have realised what that ripple effect, what had happened, he never would have done it.
How does any parent live with that grief? He will always be the son I lost.
When a family endures
a suicide, they need help. And in your case, you survived, but I really went through hell.
When I got the call, and since then, I've blamed myself for 15 years now.
You were the first person and a consistent person to ever say, you know, Kevin, you should talk about this.
You stood up and told your story, and there wasn't a dry eye in the whole place.
Today, I travel the globe spreading a message of hope. Why? Because we know it helps people heal.
I was thinking about killing myself. And because of you, I'm living, but yet, because of what you said and everything, I'm able to give back even more.
There are people out there that need to hear from someone who's got the lived experience and who's been in that incredibly dark place.
A groundswell of individuals who say, I'm gonna beat this fight, I'm gonna win this game, maybe not every battle, but I'm gonna win the war. They try to help other people change their lives. We're trying to reach out to as many communities as humanly possible to help any individual battling that epic brain pain choose a life worth living, even when they're in the darkest of hours. I don't believe we can go see a person and save their life unless you're physically like moving them out the way of a train. But what we can do is instill a glimmer of hope in their brains, and they can see that maybe there's another way, maybe there's another option, and they choose to do the work, because it takes work. It's an art to be well, to save their own lives. And if they can find a way to have that hope to do that, once you're hopeless, that's all lost. You can get suicidal once hopeless occurs. But if you reverse hopelessness, you help change a person's life so they save their own life, so they change everything about their lives, so they decide to live. You are your brothers and sisters keepers, and if you see someone in terrible emotional, maybe mental pain, please say something. And if one of you is suffering and you're quiet about it, today, tomorrow, the next, ask for help. Tell the truth about your pain, because it is the only way to purge it from your soul. Your life matters to everyone you love, everyone who loves you, everyone who cares about you, and people you haven't even met yet.
Look, Kevin, you know, as I said, one of the greatest things we can do is have that kind of impact on people's lives. It sounds like from what the science shows and what this may accomplish, a lot of lives may be saved.
I hope so. I have now lived 15 years past the day I should have died. And I'm truly grateful for that second chance at life.
I'm really honored to have on our broadcast today, on our live stream with the United Nations, Kevin Hines. Kevin, you've had an incredible, incredible story. We saw a little bit of your video earlier. One of the things that stood out to me that you said is that day that you were heading towards the bridge, you said if one person had smiled at you, maybe you would have turned around or would have made a difference. Do you think in the world today that we're so conditioned, or just, you know, this why have we gotten to such a separation, and how can we change that where we can be a little bit more compassionate towards each other?
I think that we've forgotten how to engage with people we don't know who may be in pain in a way that is helpful and brings hope to that person. From my perspective, back on that day I attempted to take my life off the Golden Gate Bridge, I just wanted one person to see me, to say something kind. Hey kid, are you okay? Brother, is something wrong? Pal, can I help you? Would have made all the difference. Heck, a smile would have made all the difference. And people just walked on by as tears flowed from my eyes as I leaned over the rail of the Golden Gate Bridge. You know, bikers, joggers, tourists, and runners went by me. Police officers searching for suicidal people went by me. And to be fair, those officers hadn't been trained in prevention. They are today. Today they saved between 50 and 120 lives a year, and that's wonderful. But back then, I was invisible to them. And I think that as human beings, we must be willing to reach in, because we have to recognize that there's a lot of people struggling mentally that aren't willing to reach out. They can't say the words first. They can't get it out. I couldn't get it out. My dad tried to help me that morning in the sense that he said, "Hey, Kevin, are you okay?" But I liked it because the voices in my head told me I had to die. And then he said, "Kev, we'll go to the beach, we'll go to the movies, we'll do whatever you want. I just feel like you need to be with me today." He was so close to wondering if I may have been suicidal, but he didn't get there. Because nobody taught my father suicide prevention techniques. Nobody taught my father to ask the question, "Kevin, are you thinking of killing yourself? Have you made plans to take your life?" Because that statistically does not get the thought in someone's mind if it's not already there. It gives them permission to speak on their pain. And that's not his fault. That's not his fault at all. And I just believe that if we could just be a more empathetic society, we could save a lot more lives.
Thank you for sharing that, Kevin. I think when we have people share their pain and their story, which is very hard to do because part of the stigma around mental health is that, or the stigma just around sharing feelings, right? Like, forget about getting to the level of somebody having a severe illness and people have that embarrassment and shame. Just the simple, process and act of, talking through where you're at, your emotional state with a friend or family member is and for some reason our society is very difficult and awkward, right? Like it's something we've kind of programmed ourselves to be against when it could be the most helpful thing. Marisa, why do you think suicide rates have increased so much? In the last 2 decades, they've increased by 30%. Amongst children, 10 to 17, they've increased by 70%. Why is society failing us? How have we gotten to this construct that we are doing ourselves a disservice in terms of our addressing mental health?
I think when you go back to some of the things that Kevin had said, we're just kind of moving through life and not paying attention to some of the small details of how people are doing and taking the time to ask, but literally asking a question. And I think a lot of, especially in the case of my son, he had a facade, right? He had a game face on and didn't want to share how he was feeling. He felt embarrassed to talk about what he was struggling with, even though I was a career social worker and we talked about a lot of these things in my home. These weren't taboo subjects, but I think there was so many different factors that have been affecting our kids over the last, and just our population in general. And I have to say that one of the things that I think is impacting our mental health in general and the sense of hopelessness that we have has a lot to do with the social media. Unfortunately, I don't think our young brains are really adapted to really understanding these personas that we create. So even though we may all walk around like everything is fine, right? We're not going to talk about our feelings. We don't think people want to care to hear about how we're feeling or really how people care about, even if you're really having a bad day, people don't want to hear about it, right? People just kind of want to move on, hear the happy. I think that gets accentuated even more in our social media personas. And so I think feeling like everybody else has got it figured out, everybody else has these perfect lives, has more friends, I think that just has had a significant impact on people's sense of connection with people, like real connection. And I think we may have a lot of friends, but we're still very lonely. I think some of the research is coming out in terms of loneliness, like there's this loneliness epidemic, and they're saying that our millennials and our Gen Zers are as lonely as what we would interpret as elderly people are, lonely and isolated. So I think there's a lot of factors. I think there's a lot of pressure for young people. And that's really the perspective that we work at with the foundation. There's a lot of effortless perfectionism, this whole thing that there's never enough that you can do when you're in high school, which college you go to, how many sports you play, and how many organizations you volunteer for. Nothing is ever enough. And I think that just really kind of puts out there a certain level of, it's just not real. It's just not real. And a lot of people are just struggling inside and just trying to keep that game face, keep people happy, and not really express how they're really doing, because I guess there's a feeling that nobody really has time to hear how people are doing.
Thank you, Marisa. And part of our conversation today with the United Nations in celebrating World Mental Health Day as part of their 40 Days Safer City initiative is this idea that they're creating a mandate to reduce urban violence by 50% by the year 2030. So the 40 Days Safer Cities program is highlighting different organizations, individuals, mayors, cities from around the world on each one of the days and trying to find or identify different indicating factors of what creates a safer city, right? So moving away from just policing and prisons and more into the arts. So we've been honored to be recognized as a film, as a media property that influences society. So Kevin, my next question for you, there's something that we definitely relate to each other and connect on. We're both survivors. We both had near-death experiences, and the beautiful thing that you've done that inspires me, that's been, my life work, that's why I'm so honored to talk to you today and have this mutual respect, is because you took yourself from a position of suffering from something, overcoming it, and then having the courage to be an advocate of it. And now you're one of the biggest voices in the world as a champion for suicide prevention. If you could share with us a little bit more about the things that you're doing, the other content you're creating, and some of your initiatives that you're currently executing to, engage this topic and try to change the narrative around suicide and mental health.
Sure. I think it's important that before I answer that question or give a response to it, let you know that, we started off this call and I think, Marisa, you asked me how I was doing, and I said I was doing fine. This week has been a bad mental health week for me. I've been having a hard time, and I want to be frank with that, so we know that this is an ebb and flow that I go through on a regular basis. I go up and I come down, and this week is a down week, and that's okay. And it's okay to be honest about that, because if we're not going to tell the people who care about us the truth, then how do we get better? But to get into answering your question. I went from being in the hospital thinking to myself, I'm going to keep this story to myself the rest of my life, and I'll be buried with it of natural causes. But I'm never gonna talk about what I did. And two clergymen in two separate situations said, you have to talk about this. And I gave my first presentation 7 months after my attempt on Good Friday at the church I grew up in, to the kids that went to that school that I went to as a kid. And here are 120 of these 7th and 8th grade kids who I think, how am I going to reach these kids? What am I doing here? Why am I doing this? This is a waste of my time. I wrote a speech till 3 a.m, not mentally healthy, the day of Good Friday. And I dropped page by page to the floor as I was shaking and crying while delivering this presentation, thinking what a waste of my time, and I didn't help anybody, and I knew it. Well, I finished dropping those pages and 8 hands go up. And 7 of those questions were intelligent, empowering, important questions, and I realized I'd made an impact. And then 2 weeks later, the priest called me back to the rectory to give me an envelope filled with 120 letters from 120 kids. And I had an impact on all of them. And several of them were actively suicidal, and they wrote that in their letters. But those letters were screened by the parents because they were under the age of 18, they were minors. And those kids were given the help they needed, and those kids are alive today. And when my father read those notes, he said, Kevin, we have to do this however, wherever, and whenever possible. And we never stopped. And it turned into this 20-year journey of sharing stories with my father, sharing stories alongside the Coast Guard officer who saved my life, sharing stories alongside my wife, Margaret, who saved my life more times than I can count on my appendages. And really, what it is today is, or pre-COVID, was traveling around the world 300 days a year plus, sharing a story of hope, healing, and recovery but continued recovery, as in I'm in recovery right now. This is not something I've overcome. This is not something that's behind me. I still go through it. And I think that's what relates to people the most is that while going through it, I still try to help people. And I'm just a cog in the wheel, like we all are, of change. And we're all in this together, the Jordan Porco Foundation, every advocate across the globe that is working toward prevention of mental wellness. We're all a team. Sometimes we need to play better in the sandbox, but we're all a team. And I think that I feel so grateful, that I got to live that day. I jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge, because 99% of those who've attended that way are gone forever. They never get to share their stories. And then I got to transform what I was doing. I got to be a part of the film The Bridge, which is a critically acclaimed movie on suicide prevention, and opened up the conversation as to why we don't have a railing or net at the Golden Gate Bridge. And then my father founded the Bridge Rail Foundation with Paul Miller and Dave Hall, and now the bridge net is being built. And as of 2023, not one more human being will ever again die off the Golden Gate Bridge, and it will become the largest and brightest beacon for suicide prevention all around the world. As it pertains to reduction of access to lethal means, one of the only ways we know to prevent suicide. And then I did some work in the parity bill with Patrick Kennedy, and that's being worked on right now. And I've done some work with the 988 number, as in changing the 1-800-273-8255 national lifeline to a 988 number, almost like it would be a 911, easily remembered to people in pain who need help immediately. Suicide prevention. And so, just being a part of this cause has been wonderful, and then turning it into something that I love. From the age of 6, I wanted to make films, and I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what my first initial thought was I had seen Ace Ventura and I wanted to be in film and make film. But that turned into something over time, where here I was given this opportunity to make a documentary about my journey, but the journey of so many other people around the world who have similar stories of surviving suicide ideation and sharing their stories and changing their world with their stories. And so we had 6 Australians in the film who shared their story from Suicide: The Ripple Effect. I directed it and co-produced it with a man named Greg DeCherry. We put our heart and soul into this film, and it's now been seen by a million people in 20 different countries. And it's something that people have said, 300 plus people have said that viewing this film saved their life. Now, I don't own that or take responsibility for that. I believe that we were a conduit of change. I didn't change a life. I didn't save a life. What I did was put something on the table that somebody saw that had a transformative effect on them, the story that was in it affected their lives, and they went home and did the work, and they saved and changed their own life. So it's great to talk to you here, Jesus and Marisa and Rachel, and talk about how we can find hope in the darkest of our hours, so we can be here tomorrow and every day after that.
Right.
Wow, that's just powerful, powerful, powerful. Man, I'm so glad that we have you on today to address the world through UN Habitat's Safer Cities program, because that's it's for me it's been such a challenge and a struggle to get people to care about this. I talk to all these major brands and corporations, and I've been in advertising for years and made these companies, millions of dollars, and they do everything to kind of suck the blood of society. Even the film industry, they've been completely irresponsible in how they address mental health. I talk about this all the time. They demonize, they criminalize, they make people with illnesses villains, right? And when you're doing something positive that you think more people would take a hold of, it's such a uphill battle. Like none of these organizations really want to help. They don't want to make a difference. They only care about their bottom line, and it becomes so disheartening to try to create change, because it seems like all the negativity and the things that divide us is what trends and what's cool and what's get picked up in the news and what they exploit, and whatever is trending in media and culture. So I'm sorry you've had a difficult week. I'm glad that you shared that with us, because I think we all have that difficultness, like we don't share it. We feel weak when if we express it, and I need to be more conscious of telling my friends and family and other people when I'm not feeling up to par, right? Because especially when you're fighting for something, people just assume that you have all the strength in the world, and they don't realize that, you know, we're all susceptible to this. We're all susceptible to, no matter how much people think your art is brilliant, like, you have self-doubt. The artists have the greatest amount of self-doubt because they're put on a different pedestal. You know, we've had some of our greatest entertainers and icons, from the fashion industry to music to film to comedians, have, you know, overdosed or committed suicide. It's so I'm glad that we're able to have this open and honest conversation, and your words today absolutely are going to inspire and save some more lives. Rachel, I want to ask you, you know, getting back to the work before we wrap up with you guys. I know you're very busy today doing Linked for Life, and you know, this day you guys are probably on the most demand out of the whole year, World Mental Health Day. Tell us a little bit more about what people can take away from this conversation and how they can follow up, and what are some of the resources and places that they can go for support or help. And even if they don't need help, maybe they, hearing Kevin's story today, maybe they just feel compassion to help other people that need it. So if it's, you know, from giving people who need help to people who want to help, what are the two resources or portals that they can access to engage the Jordan Porco Foundation?
Yeah, I would say one of the most important ones that we have is on our website, which is jordanporcofoundation.org. You can link to the many resources that are available. Kevin mentioned one, which is the 1-800-273-TALK. That's available 24/7, and it's anonymous help for you or a loved one. And you can even call that if you're worried about somebody and you're not sure what to do as well. And then there is a text line that you can get help at, and that is, you just text HOME to 741-741, and that's available 24/7 as well. And one thing I want to talk about too is there's a myth out there that if we talk about suicide, it can cause more suicides to happen, and that's not true if we talk about it using the right language. Something I've learned in this space is it's really important to follow safe messaging guidelines, and if you don't know what that is, that's okay. You can go and look at that on our website as well. Just as an example, when you use language about suicide, you say die by suicide rather than commit suicide, because that automatically has sort of a stigma associated with saying committed suicide. So die by suicide is language that you use. And then one more thing that's super important that Kevin mentioned as well is knowing what to look for. What are the signs of suicide? Familiarize yourself with those so that you can actively identify a person who may be in crisis or who may just be struggling or having a bad day, and showing them that for that moment that you care and that you're going to ensure that they get to safety and that they're okay.
It feels like we're going through such historic times in terms of unprecedented things that we haven't seen, and the impact on the world shutting down for the pandemic. So many people dying, so much fear and anxiety kind of, you know, permeating society. I feel more people now than ever are aware of the importance of mental health finally. Why do you think World Mental Health Day 2020 is more significant than some of the past decades?
I really think because the entire world is struggling with the anxiety related to this pandemic, the uncertainty, the lack of control that we have. I think, again, you know, just thinking about the 24-hour news cycle, it's really, really hard to unplug from this. And whether you trying to educate your children at home or working and trying to juggle both of those things, or have to work on the front lines and feel that you might be putting your own physical health at risk, I think it's more important today and, you know, all year to talk about our mental wellness and take care of our mental, having like the mental wellness hygiene, just like we are doing the physical hygiene, making sure that we're washing our hands, making sure that we're wearing a mask, that we're keeping our distance, but that we can't take for granted our mental health, especially now. Everybody's kind of in the same boat, and no matter what type of resource, I mean, some people are better equipped for this than others. Some people are at higher risk, but some people have lost and are grieving the loss of people that have died by COVID. It's so important that we kind of keep remembering that we need to balance both of these things on a regular basis. And some of the things that we need to do is not only kind of keep ourselves in check and keep ourselves balanced in terms of just doing little things that keep us from feeling this anxiety, but also reaching out and recognizing that maybe our family members, our friends, our coworkers are also struggling, and being there and available for them just to get through this.
Yeah, I think that's profound, really, what you said, because I'm always making this argument that we have so much focus on our physical health, our financial health, all these other things that we deem important, in this idea of, some sort of pursuit of happiness, or what is the reason for life or living, and what defines us, all these different things that we chase after that we think are going to make us happy. The thing that can help us most, which is our mental stability, is the thing that we ignore, is the thing that we least focus on collectively as a society, right? Everything that we think, whether it serves us or destroys us, is our mental health. So, why isn't there more advocacy in high school education? We teach math, science, and all these subject matters, for a young kid who comes from adversity, or even if he comes from privilege, if they have some turmoil or something going on at home, just that emotional implication affects their learning ability, right? Every decision you make throughout the day, your engagement with your family members, your friends, your loved ones, your coworkers, our perspective of life, this all impacts how successful or how fulfilled we are, or how happy we are, right? It's not what happens to us, it's how we react to it. And that work that you put into your mind, whether you meditate or you find actual help, whether if you need therapy, or some people have a chemical imbalance and they may need certain prescriptions to kind of assist their, whatever's going on in their physical or mental state. Kevin, as a fellow filmmaker, because today the UN is recognizing our film, Suicide Saint, if you can tell us, why is media important? Marisa mentioned earlier the impact of social media, but why is media in general, media, films, narratives, like what we see in film, how we look at it ourselves and each other, why is that important, and how does that impact us and everybody's collective mental health?
I think media is crucial, and social media is crucial. Positive social media, not negative social media. There's a big difference. I definitely mirror what Marisa said about that negative social media that is detrimental to people's health. But there's positive video media through the art of storytelling. And the art inside the storytelling is something that's crucial. When someone tells a story in person or through media that has painful elements to it, but ends in hope, healing, and recovery from that pain, you actually have the ability to have a transformative effect on the brain, meaning that the sticky memories go in the brain, and sticky memories go in the brain, and the neuroplasticity of the brain takes it, back brains it, and says, okay, this story can help me later on. And then when you're going through that hard time later on, you remember the story you saw or heard, whether it's in person with someone on a stage, or whether it's through a piece of media, or a film like you have, Suicide Saint. And you remember that moment in time, and it affects the way you move next. I think it's really crucial, as we have a plethora of negative media and social media out there. We need to combat that negative social media and media with a plethora of positive media that is transformative in helping people change their lives. And that's what my my company's all about, 17th Montgomery Productions, and the Kevin and Margaret Hines Foundation, is we create media mostly for YouTube that has a transformative effect on people's lives. And I'm not going to plug it here. I'm just letting you know, like we create media that people write in. They say, "This video saved my life. This video changed my life." And for the people that write in and are still in pain, we write back to them. Call the lifeline. Text the crisis text line. Please ask for the help you need. You deserve to be here until your natural end. We are with you. And so there's definitely a movement online to create positive media that has that beautiful transformative effect. But we need a lot more people creating it than we have right now.
Great.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You guys got me choked up a little bit earlier when I was just talking about the struggle. I would love to talk to you in the future. You know, maybe we start this conversation here, but I've been, wanting to push this. Not wanting. I've been actively, pushing this idea of art over algorithms. I feel like everything in the studio system is based on these algorithms where whatever A-list actor, whatever, everything that they calculate the profit potential of the film is how they indicate whether they're going to greenlight or support a production. It's not based on the artistic merit. It's not based on the social good. It's not based on the impact of society. And that does us an absolute disservice because as a culturally, we're set up where we're influenced by everything in film, music, fashion, the arts. And when all of the arts collectively entirely are predicated on profit, it doesn't allow content creators like yourself or me an opportunity to bring these things on a mass commercial space, right? We just have an exorbitant challenge and a bigger struggle to overcome all these obstacles, where in other situations it might be some crap that's going to influence people in a negative way. The music industry is very clear about that, right? You can see what goes commercial, what doesn't, and what does that, how does that influence young men in the streets or young women, or how they look at themselves and how they look at each other, by what names we call each other. Like this is really important. And I would like to have the studios, the systems be challenged. If we go to Congress with a bill that says, hey, if you're going to dump this much money into, no offense to Marvel, I see you wear the Marvel shirt. Those aren't negative movies; they're entertaining, right? But but they're making billions of dollars on that. They can, foot the bill to cover something, and there's a separation between brands and social good, right? And I feel like it shouldn't be about them committing to something or giving money to a charity. No, they need to implement it into their company culture, into their studio system. Don't donate a couple dollars here. Put money behind a film that you're going to make a blockbuster or make a huge success, or involve in your machine that's going to have this social impact. Stop, regulating this stuff to PBS or documentaries or PSAs. Like, let's infuse this into iconic films and big characters and strong narratives. Black Panther was a great film because, for a lot of young kids who felt disenfranchised, that now they could see themselves as a superhero where they never had the opportunity to see that before. That's not the case for every superhero movie. That was something that dealt with, a situation of someone being a minority and being oppressed and systematically oppressed in America. But I think for people who feel isolated and depressed and anxious, we need to create more messages that we can relate to, and then people with illnesses that they can see themselves differently on film.
Actually, Marvel is coming out with a couple of new comics that are involving kids with bipolar disorder, young girls with bipolar disorder who are also superheroes. So they're trying to get involved in that kind of an effort, which is good.
Well, we need to be a part of that. Come on, Kev, let's go. Call them up, man. We need to guide them in the right direction. They need to consult Marisa and Rachel on all the safety guidelines for the right usage of it. We got to make sure that if they're going to do it, they do it the right way.
Fair enough.
Well, thank you all for joining us today on World Mental Health Day. It's such an honor to have an amazing group of partners, and I look forward to building more with you all in the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Will Myers with an important reminder to be open about your mental health, to start the conversation about mental health and keep it going. Maybe you've tried to talk about it before, but you don't feel like anyone listened or understood, or maybe you're just embarrassed to share your thoughts with others. But please don't give up. Talk about it. If one of your friends or family or even you is struggling emotionally, you're not alone.
I'm so honored to introduce our next guest, Mayor Rob Parisi of West Orange, New Jersey. It's so important that we have these relationships with the arts community and government agencies. Mayor Parisi, thank you for joining us today.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
It's such a pleasure to have you join us on World Mental Health Day with the United Nations Safer Cities, because you've been a champion of the arts in your career as a mayor in West Orange. If you could tell our audience a little bit about some of the work you've done supporting the arts and why that's important to you.
So it goes back even before I was mayor. I was served on the council for 12 years prior to being mayor, and collectively in local government with the previous mayor and the council, and of course now since I've been mayor, we've focused on the importance of arts in terms of being an important and recognizable component of the community that helps to entice people to live here, to feel good about the community. So though I don't have a particular background in the arts other than being a lover of music, we recognized as a community going back 22 years now of the importance that the arts and supporting the arts would be to the future of our community and inspiring young people to move here and families to want to live here. So we were fortunate to work an arrangement out with a developer a number of years ago to build the township an amphitheater at no cost to the township. It's the Oscar Schindler Performing Arts Center. It's still functioning. It's a wonderful facility, both physically as well as the important programs and the wonderful programs that are there. We, even in this COVID world, over the last several weeks, we've had a number of really successful events there, but it hasn't always ended with OSPAC. We also were blessed to welcome the Luna Stage, which is a regional theater that came to West Orange about maybe 9-10 years ago, and though they are struggling now in this COVID world, but they are an important part of our Valley community, which in conjunction with our neighboring township Orange, we call that the Valley Arts Program. We have a very reputable jazz bar that's down there. It's actually on the Orange side, and just onto the West Orange side we have Luna Stage, as well as an actual facility for the West Orange Arts Council. We've been blessed to have a number of people in our community that have both made a living and in their spare time have been dedicated to the arts, and we've had a really thriving arts council for a number of years in town, and we were blessed to be able to work out an arrangement only a handful of years ago to actually give them a physical location, which is often the site of various art showings, displays, poetry readings, music events. So the township believes in the importance of arts, and we're going to continue to do whatever we can to both bring physical locations to the community, as well as doing whatever we can to support those residents and community groups that are bringing something valuable, though in some cases intangible, immensely valuable to this community and what it means to be part of this community.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you've had such a history of supporting the arts, because we have been having conversations about bringing the SICK Film School to West Orange to be the new home of our film school. Beyond the, obvious and apparent appeal of arts in any city improving the quality of life, how does it directly impact the safety of a city? And what is the correlation?
First of all, you mentioned the film school. I'm really hopeful that we could work something out. We think that would be a great addition to the community, and specifically a few of the redevelopment zones we have in township. We think that would be a great addition. So we're going to hope to continue to have those conversations. Now, as far as the importance of arts, I think it's important not only to a community, it's important to all of us as people. I mentioned earlier I don't have a big background in the arts other than a love of music, but to me, music's always been not a way to escape, but a way to bring peace and comfort. We all live stressful lives. And I think if we have what we all experience in our own lives and how we benefit, whether it's me with music or some people with movies or books or whatever it is that we see as way we bring art into our life on a more broader scale, that's hugely important to a community, especially in a world that is increasingly chaotic for all of us, and not even mentioning the COVID world we're living. But I think it's important that a community can provide art outlets to residents and as varied as possible to be attractive to the various needs and expectations of different residents. So art's important in all of our lives individually, and as a community, I think we have an obligation to provide that outlet to our residents, not only to those who feel and are inclined to express their artistic outlets, but to those who just enjoy it as a way of bringing peace and comfort to their lives.
Yeah, and when, speaking of that enjoyment, I mean, part of my mission as a filmmaker, as a content creator, is that we focus on social impact content, that we're creating messages that inspire and motivate or bring awareness to certain issues and certain societal ills. Mainly today, which is why we're being acknowledged and spotlighted and promoted to a global audience by the United Nations for our next project, Suicide Saint, which is addressing mental health. For me, when people watch cinema or listen to a song or any of these cultural arts influences on us and our collective lives, I think it influences how we see ourselves, how we see each other, how we behave with each other, our perspective of life. So it's very important that we're sending positive messages through the media for young people growing up, even for adults. Our social contract is constantly evolving, and we get these behavioral cues. Our social norms changed based on what's popular in culture. That's how we begin to move through our daily lives. So why do you think, being that today is World Mental Health Day, and the UN is recognizing Suicide Saint as a film that's addressing mental health and hoping to inspire other filmmakers and industries and brands to support projects like this, why do you think it's important that we address mental health, and what type of impact does providing resources for mental health have on a community?
So look, we've been talking a lot lately about how COVID is one of those unique situations in all our lives where nearly every American has been impacted in some way, either themselves, their own families, or they know of someone who has been impacted and regrettably probably even lost someone due to COVID. When you look at mental health, though not often talked about, COVID's fortunately going to come and go, but mental health is one of those things that, though not often talked about, that also is impacting every American in some way or another. And my family's no different. We've had family members who have experienced issues maybe at a more serious level with mental health, but even those who might not have significant mental health issues, we all struggle with the stress of life. None of us are immune to that. So as a community, we've tried to recognize the importance of addressing those needs, and candidly, for a smaller community here in West Orange, where maybe 50,000 people, the way New Jersey government's structured, we're maybe not always best equipped to deal with those issues, where some of those resources are usually counted on by the county government or even the state government, but we haven't shied away from the responsibility. So only about a year, maybe 2 years ago, the Advocates for Suicide Prevention as a community group was started, and they actually held several events and have been raising money in order to raise awareness of suicide and of the tragic circumstances that often lead to that. We also, and this maybe comes from a lot of the national events over these last several months, but just recently as a community, we're the first police department in the entire state that entered into a contract with a mental health organization. So we are now contracted with the Essex and Morris Mental Health Association to assist our police department in addressing issues of mental health in terms of emergency response. As we all know, very often when 911 is called, there's a mental health component to that call. And we now have trained professionals responding to those calls with our police department. So we know we can't be the end all in addressing the very serious issues of mental health that plague every American family in some way or another, but we are trying to do what we can to be a resource in terms of how we're interacting with members of our community. So we know we can't fix all those problems, but we want to be able to provide the resources we can to our residents that have those needs. And unlike a lot of other communities, we actually have a nurses clinic as full-time employees that often work with the segment of our community that has some of those concerns, as well as working with a charitable end to our government here in West Orange, though it's not a social program fully funded like maybe some of the county or state programs are. But we have what's called the Mayor's Sunshine Fund that often provides financial assistance and direction to those residents who are experiencing some issues and the stresses of life. We can provide them some financial comfort, while at the same time through our social services, very small, but our social services division here, we can direct them to where they can get additional help both from the county and the state level. So unfortunately, small towns can't be everything to all people, but we haven't seen that as an obstacle. We're trying to find creative ways to address the needs of mental health in the delivery of services, because we recognize that none of us are immune or our families are immune to the impacts and the stresses that mental health issues can bring to families and to communities.
Well, I absolutely appreciate the fact that it's sad that you're the only city, but it's fortunate that you are a trendsetter and a leader in the state. But that's amazing that West Orange and your police force has contracted a mental health organization, and that's indicative of what this whole 40 Days Safer Cities initiative is about, and the UN Habitat's goal to reduce urban violence by 50% by the year 2030. These type of community partnerships with police forces and mental health programs, and mayors like yourself, and arts programs and film directors like myself, that's where we need to converge to leverage the power of entertainment to reach communities in a new way, to leverage the resources of government agencies and political leaders to find solutions that impact the community in a profound way. What do you think are some more things that you can do as a mayor, or a way and to be an example for other mayors around the world? What are other ways that you can engage artists, and how can you seek to develop more of these type of partnerships that impact the community and create safer cities?
So I've been doing this for a while, and I think the biggest challenge I kind of wake up with every day is reminding myself that we have to be flexible. And I can tell you that government today doesn't necessarily function the same way it did 20 years ago. And I think as you talk about the stresses of mental health on communities, the issues of crime, and the societal issues that are thrust upon all of us, I think it's important every day as a mayor to wake up and recognize that we have to think differently sometimes. And sometimes it's national events that thrust that upon us. Sometimes it's more regional, more provincial. But I do think as a government here, we have been willing to change the way we do things to address the needs of an ever-changing community. So West Orange is in the center of Essex County, and in the 20-mile radius of the most densely populated portion of the entire country. So with that comes a lot of different opinions, a lot of different philosophies, a lot of different goals and objectives, and government has to be flexible to that. And we can never be anything to all people, but if we are going to continue to function with the basic premise that we are hoping to create a community that will inspire young families to live here, which is always our mantra, then that could take on a lot of different meanings and definitions in any given day. Obviously, it means safe streets. It means a proactive police department. Obviously, it means good schools. It means good housing stock. It means clean parks. But it also means providing the services that's going to make people feel comfortable here. And whether that's providing either access or actually specific social services, it also means providing a pleasant place to live. And a big component of that is recreation, which we spend a significant amount of resources on, but it's also the arts. So whether it's the Oscar Schindler Performing Arts Center, Luna Stage, whether it's our Arts Council, or a variety of events that, when not subjected to the COVID restrictions, that we run all year long to entice and encourage people to, whether it's their own artistic ability they're bringing to a crowd or they're bringing to the township, or providing the outlets for people who simply want to enjoy the arts. It's been part of the township's priority for 20 years, and certainly will continue to be as long as I'm mayor, and I believe will be an important part of our community long after I'm gone, as we have been blessed to welcome a number of people to move to this community that have artistic backgrounds and have a lot to offer our neighbors, and we want to provide them the outlets to share that.
And that's absolutely amazing, and I really appreciate you being such a stellar example of what a person in a mayoral role can do, and how they can impact their community and how they can make the world a better place. So thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you joining us, and I look forward to continuing conversation on how we can work together to merge arts and agencies and impact our communities in a positive way.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
So we had an amazing conversation with Mayor Rob Parisi, the mayor of West Orange, New Jersey, and I was excited to hear about their initiative of their police force working with contracting a mental health organization. So who better to have on next than the chief of police for West Orange, New Jersey, Chief Abbott. Chief Abbott, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thanks for including me, Jesus. It's a pleasure to be here.
This is exciting that, today on World Mental Health Day, we are privileged to have you as a guest to talk about this new initiative that you're doing for the police force in West Orange, New Jersey. If you could share with us more about the initiative and this new partnership that you guys have in contracting a mental health organization.
So some of the major cities throughout the nation have adopted a co-responder model where professional mental health, social workers, psychologists, what have you, will respond either alone or in tandem with the police, depending on the nature of the call and whether or not there could be danger and violence involved. I'm not aware of any police departments in New Jersey doing this whatsoever other than us, and most, as I said, are major cities throughout the nation. So we're the first, medium-sized police department with the staffing level of, roughly 100, give or take, that has embarked on this even nationally that I know of, although, once again, there may be others. We have had a really good working relationship with the Mental Health Associates of Essex and Morris, dealing with our homeless population. So we've expanded that through a formalized agreement, which was ratified by the governing body, which allows this co-responder model. In the past, we would notify Morris Mental Health Associates, rather, we would notify them of a homeless issue. They would go out, but now we're actually going to people's homes and so on, and they're accompanying us. They also review all of our body cam footage of any contacts that we have with anybody who's experiencing an episode, mental health type of episode, to see how we could maybe do this better as a training model. They point out what we do right. They will point out what we do wrong. To the credit of the officers on the street, there really hasn't been any issues that they've noted that needs improvement. They've been very impressed with the way we're handling things so far, but I believe there's always room for improvement. So I'm sure at some point they're going to find something that, maybe we could do better.
And thank you, Chief Abbott, for being a visionary and being a leader, and being I'm hoping that other police forces and chiefs around the world can be inspired by the initiatives that you're creating to address mental health. Mental health is such a crisis, and now, you know, with the pandemic and people isolation and loss of jobs and so many other issues creating anxiety, we're seeing more spikes and more relevance around mental health. How has why do you feel it's important that we address mental health in general, and how do you feel mental health plays a role within actual police forces? Within you know, being an officer is a high stress job. Is, you know, it's demanding. You're put in situations that most people don't have to deal with. You know, that's a lot of times unsafe situations where you have to react in an instant to save your life or somebody else's life, you know, to prevent your loss of life. It's such a high stress environment. Why do you think mental health is important that we pay more attention to this and create more resources and have more partnerships around this?
So to answer your first question, if you draw a dichotomy, you look at the public at large, there are so many people that are in the criminal justice system who ended up there because they didn't receive the proper treatment for mental health issues. I think if we can start to put resources into mental health and treat people the way they need to be treated, the population of the jails and prisons will shrink dramatically. Now, the second side of your question, your second question, dealing with the officers themselves, is that we've developed a wellness program to monitor our officers and to maintain confidentiality and to get them any help in stressful situations they need. We have an officer specifically assigned to that, a sergeant, Andy Berkery, who's very well regarded by his peers. And, you know, people you need to have somebody in a position like that there's an element of trust, that they feel comfortable going to someone like that to seek out any assistance they needed. Now, of course, they're also free to go into our employee assistance program completely anonymously. They don't need to go through Sergeant Berkery, but cops tend to like to talk to cops. So he's had people come to him, and I tell him, you know, I only need to know what I need to know. If there's any danger, immediate danger to an officer or others that I need to be aware of, that's fine. If it's, you know, routine stressors that the officer needs to develop coping skills with, and you're referring to a specialist or you're helping him yourself, then that can obviously be maintained as a confidential matter.
There's been a lot of discussion around policy changes and questions of how to, you know, reassess the effectiveness of policing within certain communities because of certain tragedies. It does point to some problems that exist. What are some of the policies or changes that you're leading or that you see are going to happen in the U.S. to make things better?
So you can craft the best policies, you know, in the world or in the industry. You can train in those policies, and if you don't train in those policies, they're meaningless because your people won't understand what they are just by reading them and really know what you want. Sometimes policies generate more questions than answers, so it's important to train in them. And then the third leg of that three-legged stool, as I like to refer to it as, is always the practice. So you have policies, training, and the practice. The practice is what you actually do. You can have, once again, the best policies in the world and train in them, but if you don't follow them, then they're meaningless. So following them is part of a culture, and that's instilled in people from the day you hire them. You try to hire the best candidates you can, and you indoctrinate them from the day they start here that, you know, we're a professional agency, we're a compassionate agency, and we are not, you know, keepers of the gate. We're not warriors, we're guardians. We're here to police in a consistently, constitutionally, and compassionate manner.
Thank you, Chief Abbott. I really appreciate your focus, your vision, your focus on solutions for the community. You know, we definitely need more chiefs with your vision and in your position to you know, push forward such positive changes. I really like the idea of focusing on the practice. You know, for me, it's the same thing in advertising or content and production. You know, brilliant ideas is meaningless without a flawless execution. So I understand that there's a lot of challenges. The country is very divided, very tense, a lot of anxiety. So this is refreshing to hear from a police chief who's getting it right and who's a leading example to others and how to do it the right way. So thank you again for your time today. Everyone, thank you for continuing to tune in. October 10th, World Mental Health Day, as we address how to create safer cities and utilizing arts for violence prevention, and our wonderful conversation with the Chief of Police for West Orange, New Jersey.
Thank you.
And now I'd like to introduce Bob Davidson, the CEO of the Mental Health Association of Essex and Morris. Bob, if you would mind telling us, how did this partnership come about with the police force?
Well, first, it's good to be with you, and thank you very much for having me. On background, our jails and prisons in the United States have become the biggest overnight caregiver of individuals with serious mental illness. Now, that's a major problem because many of those individuals are incarcerated simply for the crime of being mentally ill and as a result of their symptoms. I mean, certainly they may have behaved in ways that society needed to address, but incarcerating them for their medical disorder is immoral and inhumane. So that's the current state in the United States. So West Orange, the city of West Orange, is being very progressive, and they contacted us, and they want to do more work when the police are actually interacting with individuals with mental illness, which is where the process begins that ends up in individuals often inappropriately being incarcerated. So we were very excited that they wanted to do that. And basically, they want their interactions to be more productive, more proactive, and result in the individual ending up in care rather than being arrested and or incarcerated. So they reached out to us, and we met with the mayor, the chief of police, and other individuals from the city of West Orange, and we designed a program which is the following. One is we've developed training tapes for the entire force on dealing with mental illness and de-escalating those that are mentally ill. Secondly, and this is very novel, the police force is actually sending us their body cam footage of interactions with individuals with mental illness. We're reviewing that footage and we're giving them recommendations on how they can improve. And then thirdly, to the extent that we have the resources available, we've been co-responding with the police force. We're actually sending out a licensed clinical social worker to co-respond with the police force. So when they interact with the individual that's mentally ill and or suicidal, we're able to provide technical assistance right there on the spot. And we've been doing it since September 1st, and it's already resulted in people being sent into treatment and into care rather than having to be arrested and or incarcerated. So we're very excited about it. We think it's the right thing to do. And we hope that more communities throughout the nation consider this collaborative, innovative project.
Oh, not only throughout the nation, but throughout the world. I'm so glad to have you today as the UN is highlighting, this 40 days Safer Cities Challenge on a global scale, that, your program can be an inspiration to other people around the world and other organizations on how they can create changes. So, the more I research mental health and the more I understand about how it impacts every other aspect of society, it's alarming when I see the number of people who are incarcerated, to your point, based on mental health. So, we can say that there is definitely an indicator, or there's a factor between addressing mental health as an issue as opposed to just addressing crime in terms of how we can create safer cities. Why do you think it's important that we focus on mental health, and what are some other things that we can be doing?
Well, what we've shown time and again is if there's an individual who's sick, either through mental illness or addiction for that matter, if we're able to get them into treatment, their recidivism rate goes way down. Because in fact, mental illnesses are real, addictions are real, treatment's available, and recovery is possible. Now, I'm not saying this is a panacea. I'm not saying we're able to help everybody. We're not, but we're able to help most people. And most people, if we get them into treatment and get them the services that they need, will not present themselves in the future or have no reason to be in contact with the police.
Sure, and I think it extends beyond illness. Like the reason I'm doing this film, Suicide Saint, to address mental health is one, to change the stigma of illness in society.
If someone has a mental illness, that's an illness of a brain. That's an illness of the brain. It's a chemical disorder. It's no different than if someone has hypertension or diabetes. It's an illness. The brain is part of the body, and we need to treat it as such.
Sure, and I think it also extends, the focus on mental health in general extends beyond illness, right? We have all these other things, our physical health, our financial health that we focus on and put priority, but our mental health.
There is no physical health without mental health. Because again, the brain is part of the body, and we can only be physically healthy if we're mentally healthy. You cannot separate the two. So you're right, we shouldn't just be focusing on illness. In regards to our program with the West Orange Police Department, that's often the focus, because that's often when the police get involved. But well before that, we should be focusing on mental health. For example, in the United States, and sadly throughout the world, mental illness is the only illness that more times than not, we wait until stage 4 to intervene. Other illnesses, you want to do prevention or intervene at stages 1, 2, or 3. Unfortunately, in our country and throughout the world, intervention is often started at stage 4, where someone is severely impacted by their mental health disorder. And that's what we have to change.
Sure, or sometimes people go a lifetime undiagnosed, right? And there's so many people that are bipolar. You have somebody in your family, you never know why they act that way, and come to find out that their entire life there was this conflict because of an undiscovered or unrecognized disorder.
Well, the research is very clear. 1 in 5 of us on any given day have some type of mental health or substance abuse disorder. And in fact, 1 in about 18 of us are going to have a major psychiatric disorder. So if you think about it, that's every family and every extended family. Mental health or mental illness and addiction is an issue for every family in the world.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, in the U.S., half of adults, 46%, deal with mental illness at some point in their life. So thank you for bringing that up. I think everybody's impacted by it directly or indirectly. Somebody suffering illness or someone close to them is suffering illness. The chief of police, Chief Abbott, also mentioned that we started to discuss not only about the implications of changing their processes of how they respond to certain calls and dealing with the public, the safety concerns of the public, and recognizing mental health and responding to it appropriately, but also police officers themselves. They're in a high stress job. Sometimes they work long hours. Sometimes they're in dangerous situations. Right. We know from the veterans that served in the U.S., many of them committed suicide, many more than who actually died in combat. What is being done to address the mental stability or sometimes if an officer has anxiety?
The suicide rate among police officers is significantly higher than the general population. And that's due to 2 things. One is the stress of their job. It's a very stressful job. But secondly, they also have access to lethal means, their guns. So we need to create an environment within police departments that officers feel free to seek the help that they need to deal with the stress without the fear of being stigmatized or without the fear of losing their gun. And to do that, we need to be very proactive. And I salute Chief Abbott and Mayor Parisi, because they're doing that with the police force in West Orange. They are intentionally creating that culture.
That's awesome. Thank you, Bob, for helping to make the world a safer place and making, in your efforts and your work to create safer cities. And I really appreciate your time today.
Give peace a chance. Thank you.
The UN has recognized art based on the growing evidence of it being a tool for mental health well-being. And Suicide Saint is indeed within one of those films that will go a long way in addressing mental health in our communities worldwide and in showcasing that individual action can and will make a difference to the creation of safer cities for all.